What's up, everyone? Today we're going to put on our growing hats and figure out what we can do with this mass market ficus. I've done a couple videos with it in the past. You can check those out. Those have to do with wiring and unwiring. But today we're going to start it on its way to being a real bonsai. All right, well, when I say real bonsai, I'm not trying to be snobbish or anything like that. These are mass market ficus. They're produced in China and imported into the US. You can correct me if you know something more about the industry than I do. They're pretty predictable. So basically they have an S curve, almost all of them. And it's not perfectly the same on every one, but it does get a little bit uninteresting and repetitive. There's nothing wrong with them. This one has gotten a lot bushier and more interesting looking since I wired it the first time, and then I've cut it back a couple of times since then. So, but in the end, this is not the type of tree that I really like to have in my collection. And because I'm using it as an example for videos for you guys to get ideas, I want to push this a little bit further this time, and it's not going to take me very long to complete it, so I'm just going to talk about it for a little while first. Now, one of the things in really good bonsai that you see, and this is across all types of bonsai, so if you look at pictures on the internet, on Instagram or whatever, of really interesting trees, this same species coming out of Indonesia and Taiwan, there are some of the most beautiful bonsai in the world. Incredibly created bonsai made out of this same species. So it's not the species that is limiting you in terms of your creativity. This species is great for bonsai. And all you need to do is kind of put on your grower's hat and think, how can I take what I have here as a starting point and create a much more interesting bonsai out of it? Now, as a grower, I don't take anything as a given. As a bonsai, you know, if you're just trying to finish a bonsai and make it look pretty, you're like, oh, okay, so I can't correct the trunk. I can't change the trunk. There's nothing I can do about that. That's a given. I can't change the nabari. That's a given. Or I could slowly improve the nabari maybe, but I can't do it rapidly in any given sort of way. So if I just wanted to improve the aesthetics of this tree, all I need to do basically at this stage is come in here and cut off these long shoots and continue the development that I started in the last two videos. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If you like the way that your tree looks, then this is the type of work that you would be doing when you have long shoots like this. I'm just scissoring them back to one or two leaves, and that's kind of all you need to do. You can pull off long things, make sure that shoots that are coming from lower branches are not going up through the crown, take off interior growth like this. So all of these things are pretty well understood, and this is not, I don't have my grower's hat on yet. I'm actually going to have to get a hat that says grower. But anyway, all right. So, like, you know, this, here, let me just finish this cutback. All right, so maybe that looks better to you now, or maybe it looked better before. But what I've just done is sort of a combination, and I'm probably not quite finished, but you'll see why I'm not going to be really meticulous about this here in a minute. You know, this would further the design, so I might take off, you know, a few shoots that are coming out, going down low, or cut back some of these, you know, bigger branches to create more taper. So when you're working on broadleaf evergreen trees or deciduous trees like this, you want to create movement and branch taper and more refinement. So those types of cutbacks or combination of wiring and cutback is what you could do here, and you could continue developing the tree in this sort of proportion. That is a perfectly acceptable thing to do, but it's not what I want to do with this tree. So, as I mentioned, I am going to do something a little bit more drastic. And so I'm putting on my grower's hat now, and I'm thinking to myself, I am no longer going to take this trunk as a given. I am going to cut it back and start over essentially with this tree, creating an entirely different tree in a way, because the majority of the tree that I have here is basically going to be discarded. I'm actually going to try to root it and make different trees out of it. But what I'm going to do is what I mentioned in the last time I worked on this, and that is I'm going to cut this way down here. Now, what that's going to do is the tree's going to bud out all over the place down here. It's already budding right here, and there's a branch right here. And I may or may not cut this one back. That kind of gives me an option. But there's nothing really above this point that is going to be valuable in the type of composition that I want to create. So say I want a shohin, like a fat trunked shohin ficus. I can start with this. I mean, this has like a 1.5 to 2 inch girth to it already, and the root display is not fantastic, but it's also not awful. They are very workable and adaptable. So today is going to be step one in terms of this guy turning into a nice, more classically proportioned shohin bonsai. And when I say that, I really mean something that would go into a shohin display stand in a traditional Japanese show. Now, this is not a traditional Japanese species, so we're kind of interpreting things here. And I'm going to use the inspiration that I've seen coming from Indonesia and Taiwan as the starting point. But like I said, this is going to be a growing operation, so here comes the saw. Yeah, all right. All right, so like I said, I want to capture a little bit of this turn here, like this sort of line as it comes over this way. So I'm going to cut it up here and see what happens. That's going to give me, like, these little bumps here are already looking like they're prone to budding out. And it'll give me a little bit of leeway in terms of if I don't get budding exactly where I want it. So I might get it up here, here, or even down in here, and then I can come back and make that decision later. But here we go. Now, as I do this, I don't have it strapped down or anything, and in fact, it's not even tied into this pot. But I'm not thinking about this like I'm a bonsai artist and this is a 80-year-old pine tree or something like that. I'm thinking about this like this is a young piece of nursery material, which it really is, and I want to turn it into something that it isn't right now, and that is shohin. My saw is binding up. And there you have it. Now I'm actually going to cut this into a couple of different pieces and try to root them. These guys aren't that hard to root, even at a relatively large size, and there's some other things that I can use in here. But let's focus for the rest of the video on this. So basically, you can see, and if you're not already familiar, this is the ficus sap, which contains latex, and I find it irritating to touch, so I tend to wear gloves usually when I'm working on ficus, but don't have them on today. Now, we don't have to keep what was originally the front, and the next step for this really is that I can leave it in this pot. It's not pot bound, but ultimately I'm probably going to want to put it into a larger pot. I mean, if you look at this, there's plenty of volume here worth of soil. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding a ton of fertilizer to this. So I'm not trying to contain it. I'm not trying to make this right now into a refined bonsai. What I really want is just really strong growth coming out from this part of the trunk, so that the next step that I take, being wiring those shoots and creating a little bit more structure, happens more quickly rather than, a year from now or something like that. Now, in terms of this branch that I left here, this is an option. I could bend this around to create a top, but I don't like it right here in this position as the top. I'd rather have the top come from in this area. And so I'm going to leave that, and ultimately what I would do is just kind of cut it back here to continue the development of the taper of that branch as well. And I'm not going to decide on doing that until I see how the budding goes around this large cut. All right, so that's it for this time. Not too much work to do, just a lot of talking. Next time I revisit this tree, I will be looking at the new shoots that it produces, and we'll take it through step 2. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.